Hi, my name is Austin Zoot, and welcome to the Zoot Perspective Web Congregation. This week we're back in Exodus talking about the face-off between Moses and Pharaoh, with God as sort of an intermediary between the two. I was a little disappointed when I saw that this is the third week in a row that we're talking about God trying to exert his will over Pharaoh. So I had to do a little deeper reading to find something to talk about, although I guess that's what the Torah portion is generally for, and frankly that's what the Zoot Perspective Web Congregation is for, so we're working well. But what I came to was an interesting little passage where God is preparing for the final plague, which is the slaying of the firstborn in Egypt. And God is walking Moses through the steps of the process, which God has been known to do for the last 9 plagues. And one of the things God talks about is that this is the first day of the month. This is the beginning of the first month in the new counting of months for the people. An interesting choice of phrase that in and of itself may be interesting and tangential, but what comes next is what surprised me. God tells Moses that the people are supposed to take the lamb, the sacrificial lamb, which will become part of the Passover tradition, and they're supposed to bring it into their home on the 10th day of the month. Now that's interesting because the 10th day of the month implies that if we're starting counting now, it's 10 days from this conversation. Well then, God tells Moses that the family is supposed to watch over this lamb for 4 days until the 14th of the month. Okay, so now that's the implication of 2 weeks after this conversation. Then the lamb is to be killed and sacrificed, and eventually processed in such a way that it should be eaten as the feast for the Jewish people. Following me so far? Great. Well, that raises some red flags to me. According to the timeline that we generally discuss as part of the Exodus story, Pharaoh lets the people go so quickly and in such a rush that they don't have time to leaven their bread. We eat this matzah, this flat cake, because we didn't have time for the bread to rise. Well, if we didn't have time for the bread to rise, we weren't paying attention, because we really had 2 weeks. If we couldn't figure out how to get our bread to rise in 2 weeks, we probably didn't know what we were going to be doing in the wilderness. But we actually have to read a little further. That not having enough time for bread to rise is actually not quite accurate. Because what is accurate is, later on in the conversation, God actually tells Moses that the people are supposed to expel all of the leavening and get rid of all of the bread products, and we are instructed to eat these flat unleavened cakes. We are instructed to do it, we don't need to do it. It wasn't of some necessity or some lapse in ability that we were doing this. It was because we were specifically asked to, and we were specifically told to do this. Now, that may be a subtlety that may not be important to some, but I found that particularly interesting and particularly meaningful, because so much of what we believe to be necessary is necessary out of necessity. Now that is a complicated sentence, but we'll break it down. So many of the things we do because we need to. We do them because we didn't have another option. We didn't have enough time. We couldn't make any other option work. Those are understandable choices to be made, but it really takes the decision-making out of our hands. We didn't have enough time to get it done, so it just didn't get done. Or it didn't have enough time to get it done, so it happened a certain way. What's even more significant, though, are the actions we do because we are asked to do them and agree to do it that way. God asks us to evict, although that's a strange choice of words, to expel all of the leavening and all of the bread products from our houses, and instead to eat these flat unleavened cakes, that's matzah. And we make the conscious choice to actually behave that way. We make the conscious choice to do what we were asked. That is so much more valuable than making a decision because of necessity. So this year, when we're eating that matzah, which I know some people like more than others, I'm of the others variety, when we're eating that unleavened bread, it isn't because we had to, it's because we had the opportunity to. It's because we were given the gift of being able to have the freedom to expel our bread products and make the choice to eat the matzah therefore buying into this equation God is creating for us and this plan God is creating for us. It's a little bit complicated. It's something new and fresh and different that I got out of this week's Torah portion. I'd love to hear what you have to say, so please share a comment below and also make sure to subscribe and follow all of the great stuff at Zoot, with the Zoot Perspective, especially on Twitter. Follow me, AustinZoot12. Make sure you stay connected to the Zoot Perspective. Thanks, and Shabbat Shalom.